Yes, so today we'll be talking about the greatest defender of the Christian faith, William Lane Craig. This title I've given him, I'll admit, is quite prestigious, but it is completely deserved. I've watched many of his debates, not all of them, but many of them, and I can frankly say I've never seen him lose. Which is saying a lot, considering how much Christianity is maligned for its lack of reasonability, supposed reasonability. So, I'm going to go over some of my favorite performances from him. So first we have a young, bearded Bill Craig debating the Nothing's Here man, Peter Atkins. This debate, admittedly, was not huge in terms of viewership, but it was a very good performance from Craig. I would say Atkins defeated himself in this debate by his lack of knowledge. Quite frankly, I mean, if you watched it, you would know what I mean. I would say it's more of the same for the second debate they had in 2011.
There is nothing here, I will concede that, but it's an extremely interesting form of nothing. There was nothing originally. There is nothing here now, but it's through whatever event took place at the inception of the universe, it became an interesting form of nothing.
Then we have Keith M. Parsons' debate with William Lane Craig. Another excellent performance by Craig, not much to be said. They can be summed up in one moment.
Okay, so very many of these experiences, which occur, as I say, to a very considerable segment of the population, seem extremely real at the time. What causes hallucination? Well, the Encyclopedia of Psychology that I was reading says extreme depression, an extreme experience of loss, of alienation. Surely the disciples, after the death of their leader, as Dr. Craig said, would have been experiencing precisely those severe psychological symptoms that would induce such hallucinations.
Well, these cases have to be assessed on a case-by-case basis.
Of course.
You can't dismiss the resurrection narratives on the basis that some other spurious miracle stories have occurred. You have to assess each one on its own merits. And what I fear from your response is that this watchword, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, is really just an excuse for an a priori rejection of the miraculous, because you didn't give any sort of evidence that would satisfy you with respect to one of these extraordinary claims. It made it sound like, to me, you were saying that nothing would convince you, no matter what.
No, all sorts of things would convince me.
Well, with respect to the resurrection, though, I mean, you said if there was a video camera, you'd say it was a fake stone that was rolled away. You know, I mean, what sort of...
That would be the more reasonable hypothesis under the circumstances.
Well, but see, that's what I fear. It is. It's just an a priori rejection of the miraculous here. You're not. There isn't any kind of literary testimony, historical testimony that could convince you.
Once again, it's common sense. Let me appeal to court cases, okay? In court, on what basis do we believe certain testimony, okay? Well, we believe testimony often on the basis of how likely or unlikely we think it is that somebody is telling the truth, on the basis of all sorts of surrounding circumstances. Now, in court case, generally speaking, there are no claims to supernatural action. There are no claims to anything occurring which was physically impossible or against the laws of nature, however one wants to phrase it, that sort of thing. Yet we still judge guilt or innocence, send people to the to execution or not, on the basis of what we consider to be likely or unlikely on the given circumstances, that sort of thing. So once again, these extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence in no way implies a bias against the supernatural. It's simply an application of a rule which we use in our daily lives.
But you're saying that when you say extraordinary, really what you're saying is no amount of evidence would convince me of these extraordinary claims.
Sure it would. If tomorrow morning, immediately after breakfast, suddenly there was an earthquake, and a silvery light shone in the sky, and the leaves dropped from the trees, and I dashed outside, and there, towering over us like 100 Everests, was this giant figure with lightning playing around his Michelangeloid face, and he pointed down and saying, "Be assured, Keith M. Parsons, that I do in fact exist, and I'm sick of your logic chopping." Dr. Craig, I would join you in the pew of the church, in the front pew of the church the next Sunday.
Be going to the question and answer period. We're going to go to the question and answer period, so we'll be going to the microphone as we wind this down.
You don't think that you would have said, boy, I was having a hallucination.
Now, Craig versus Carrier the Nerd. This debate was a bit weird because in terms of scholarly criticism of the Gospels, Carrier was quite... Well, I use the word radical. Yeah, I use the word radical in his viewpoints. I would say he was pretty ad hoc, in my opinion. Craig took him to the butchers with the... Now, Craig versus Wolpert. It's another debate where the opponent was just not prepared to face Craig. He seemed completely unprepared to face the Kalam argument from Craig. I mean, he basically... I'm sure he was trying to make a joke with it, right? But in reality, he basically admitted himself that God exists. If you took what he said literally, I won't, but if you did, that's the result you'd get.
I was simply saying that this is not a mere matter of speculation, that there's more than a tiny bit of evidence on the table.
But is he saying
evidence for what?
Evidence for a beginning of the universe.
Yes.
Well, we know that. Nobody
All
disputes
right, well, that's what I'm offering in this first argument, is the evidence.
But
But
because
why?
it's the
'Cause nobody
beginning
disputes
doesn't
it.
imply a God.
It does if the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. It logically follows
Yeah,
that
but it
therefore...
doesn't. But the cause hasn't got to be God.
Well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless,
Yes, I know.
spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal.
I think it's a computer.
Well, that wouldn't... computers are designed by people. I mean,
No, this is a self-designing computer.
timeless?
Timeless.
well, that's a contradiction in terms.
Why is it time? What's contradictory about it?
A computer has to function. It takes
Oh
time.
no, this is a special computer.
Yeah, but it has to be logically coherent.
Oh, it's logically coherent.
Yes, you have to be
Oh
logically
no,
coherent.
this
And
computer
besides-
is amazing.
No, besides, it would have to be, as I said, a personal being.
No.
And a computer is a physical...
Not this computer.
object.
Oh
Well, then,
no.
Okay, see, what you're doing is what you're calling a computer is really God. A non-physical, It's just another word if you rob it of all the attributes that make it a computer.
Now, the second most viewed of Craig's debates is with Christopher Hitchens. Now, heading into this debate, Craig seemed to be in a bit of trouble because Hitchens was just fresh off of destroying Frank Turek. Not in terms of arguments, I would say Turek won in terms of arguments, but in terms of rhetoric, Hitchens just... Turek got beat very badly in terms of rhetoric. So, as a Christian, there was very good reason to be concerned that Craig would lose for the same reasons, but no. He stuck to the same arguments, didn't get emotional. His rhetoric was clean. His rhetoric was, I would say, nearly perfect. So, Hitchens was really only left to his arguments, which, this is the only time I've ever seen Hitchens really flustered. Which is what happens when you just leave him to his arguments. His arguments alone are not that good. His rhetoric is just very strong. As one atheist site put it, Craig spanked Hitchens like a foolish child. Now, if Harris versus Craig, this is another debate where Craig seemed to be in a bit of trouble. Harris is another one of the... Hitchens is the first of the henchmen of the new atheists, the first of the three. In no specific order. Then you have Harris, and the third is Dawkins. We'll talk about him after this, but... Because of that, Craig seemed to be in a bit of trouble, but no. Harris failed to stay on debate topic. Craig prevailed once again by sticking to the basics, focusing on the topic, and winning. Now, this is something I'll cover more in the future, the debate that never was. Richard Dawkins versus William Lane Craig. So, This can be summed up in one word: cowardice. Richard Dawkins is a coward. So, in closing, I think Craig is a very good case study into the strength of Christianity as a worldview. He comes to every single debate with the same exact arguments for like the past 30 years, and he wins every single time because the arguments are very strong compared to the counter arguments that atheists can offer.